Hey everybody, Eric Dorward here at the Spartan Rocketry Club, and I'm continuing my build of the Estes Great Goblin. So the fins, well, I'm not quite done with them, but they need to dry for a bit. So I'm going to work on the motor mount now. So things we need from the bag include these, which are the centering rings, and we need that tube, and I'm going to need some stuff from this particular bag right in here. Really, it's not much, so I'm not going to open this the whole way. I just need, well, I need this temporarily. I might as well take that too. That is the retention system, and I need that guy. All right, the rest of this, you know, we'll need that later, but not for a while. All right, so first things first. These are cardstock. I'm just going to punch them out with my hands. This is, well, this is probably going to be one of the limiting factors on the rocket for how much abuse it can take. I'm actually kind of surprised that these are cardstock, a little bit. Not wildly surprised, honestly, but they certainly could be made out of wood. And a lot of kits that are mid-powered, the centering rings are going to be made not out of cardstock, but out of plywood, probably. So this is not the strongest thing in the world. I'm going to end up epoxying this together. Not in this video. I'm going to epoxy as a reinforcement on this. So I'm just going to use regular wood glue to put it together. But the fact that structural elements of this are that are going to take a decent amount of abuse are paper rather than wood. That might end up being a problem. So it should be fine with, say, up to like a G. So high end maximum thrust around 80 newtons, but I wouldn't want to push it much past that. Plus, this ought to do pretty well with a G motor, and it's probably going to go like a quarter of a mile up. So hopefully we don't need to worry too much. All right, anyway, um, well, this is kind of interesting. I would have expected to need to measure off some space for this, but apparently that's not how we're going to do it, which is fine. I guess I don't need my ruler. Honestly, kind of surprised about that. Now, this bit of green tubing needs to fit over here, but it doesn't really, which, you know, that's kind of the point. It's supposed to be snug. The way you're going to expand it is you're going to use the nose cone to kind of pry it open a little bit. So you're just going to ram the thing into the nose cone, push down into it, and that should open it up a bit. So we'll see how that goes. Sometimes this takes a couple cracks in order to loosen the material up enough for it to actually get onto the tube, but that's all right. Okay, so the instructions for this are going to use one of the fins. I'm going to actually bring two up to make my life a little bit easier. So the fins are going to be my guide, my like spacing guide in this. So first thing is the green bit is going to go right at the end, and I'm going to take not the one with the notches in it, but one of the other two, and it's going to slide down like so until it is flush against the green ring, and the green ring is flush against the ground or the end or whatever. Now, I'm going to tack this in with just wood glue here. And you'll notice I didn't put any glue underneath it, which is kind of odd. So the bond here is going to at least be wood glue to start. Now, as I mentioned, I do want to reinforce all this with epoxy. So I'm going to build this, and then I'm going to put what is essentially an epoxy fillet around where I am currently spreading the glue. So this is only phase one of construction. I don't really like working with epoxy, honestly. It smells terrible. It's not good for you, certainly if you touch it. So I don't want to do epoxy multiple times. I'm going to need probably two separate epoxy excursions. I really don't want it to be three. So yeah, epoxy is going to come later. All right, so that takes care of this first bit. Now the second bit, The goal is that I'm going to use the fin here, and the fin is going to be the spacer to figure out where the next one goes, and it's going to be the one with the notch in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide the, there we go. Probably could have taken the burrs off. And the fact that I have the fin on here is making this a little bit more difficult than it needs to be. So maybe we'll take that off for a moment. There we go. So this I'm going to slide down, and where does it go? Well, it's going to fit in like this, and then I need it to fit snugly right in here like this. So the goal here is this is going to be part of the through the wall construction, through the tube construction, and it needs to line up like perfectly. I think that's probably the main reason why we were not marking this with pencils and rulers and that kind of thing. So I'm actually going to take, as I said, I have multiple fins here for a reason. I'm going to take another one and I'm going to put it on here as well and check the fit. Okay, that looks pretty good. Great. I'm going to carefully take those out. There might be a little bit of glue, but that's okay. And so the next thing I need to do then is I'm going to take the spacer off the back end, and I'm going to push it up here to just hold things in place. And I did bump things a little bit, so I'm going to double check that I didn't mess anything up here because this is kind of mission critical. Looks fine. I'm just going to test it in a couple places. Yeah, should be good. Okay. Now that that's done, I do need to put some glue in place. And yeah, I'm going to glue in here. Just got to make sure that I do this right. Yeah, I'll just put some glue in here. Again, I am going to epoxy all this stuff, so this is just to keep things in place for the moment. Don't go too wild with the glue here either, because things do need to fit. And while this is not a lot of glue, it is not zero glue. And the glue could potentially, if you are a little overzealous with it, get in the way. All right, so that's taken care of. I really should apply glue. You know, I'm only tacking this in for the time being, so I'm not going to really worry about putting the glue on this seam here and this seam here, although I certainly could. The green spacer is going to be a permanent feature right where it is, so I'm not going to mess with that. The last thing I'm going to do, though, is this piece goes at the end. It's supposed to go close to, but not exactly at the end. And the reason for that is so you can put fillets on both sides. So what I'm actually going to do is I am going to apply glue to the end of the tube, or close to the end of the tube this time. Like this. And part of the reason here is that as I push through, the glue is going to, it's going to bind in between the tube, but it's also going to begin to build a fillet at the end. A little more. A little more. Usually I just kind of cram this down so that it's flush with the ground, but that is not what the instructions say to do, so I'm not going to. All right, so that's great. Spread this out. And then I'm going to tack. Let's make sure that's on straight before I start tacking it. And then you can check to see that it's on straight by just spinning it and looking down it vertically. If it wobbles like a loose wheel, then you know that it's not on straight. That's just visual, of course. I guess you could roll it on the ground if you really wanted to, but there's probably a lot of reason not to do that. All right. Okay. Checking the alignment there, looks pretty good. Before I let this dry, I'm going to make one last check, because remember, if these don't fit in, then I got problems. So I'm going to check it in a few places. Might as well check all four, honestly. Really, if two of them fit, it should be all right. But it does not hurt to check all four. And it looks fine. Okay. All right, so this needs to dry. By the way, I did have this out. Sometimes they have you test like the end here. There is a bit of a gap in there. So I should be able to put an epoxy fillet in here without any real consequences, and this should still fit on fine. All right, so I'm going to let this dry. You need to stand it vertically, I guess that should be okay. All right, so that needs to dry before we do anything else. One last thing that I'm going to do right now, since I got the camera running anyway, I don't know if I'm actually going to get through all this or not, but I do need to cut out the eyelet here in the giant nose cone. This actually, as I take the knife out, I'm actually going to grab my cut-resistant glove just to be safe. Safety is always a good idea when pretty much doing anything with rocketry, but here, yeah, I don't need to spend some more time in the ER, urgent care or whatever. So I'm going to just repeatedly trace along the seam here, and this is really thick plastic, and I would be surprised if I get through this in the next couple minutes. It's going to take a while in all likelihood. There's no real sense in watching me just cut a piece of plastic over and over and over again for 20 minutes. So I'll just show some of it. And if I get through the little notch, great. And if I don't, well, assume that I just did the same thing for a while longer. Generally, the goal here should be to cut away from, well, obviously from your hand. That's the number one thing, but also away from the eyelet part. And I realize I'm saying that and doing the exact opposite. I would rather protect my hand than worry too much about the plastic, but this is also really thick plastic. So the likelihood that like the blade slips and I chop clean through the hook part or the eyelet part that's going to hold the rocket together, I would say that is exceedingly unlikely. Here, though, like this part, you're going to have to cut toward the eyelet one way or the other, right? Because it's either you're cutting this way toward this part or back toward that part, and, you know, it's the eyelet one way or the other. But yeah, like, do be careful with this. Anytime you're cutting plastic, you should really be careful, just on general principle, partially because this is probably the single most expensive individual component of the rocket, and if you needed to replace it because you broke it, that would stink. But also, like, your hand is much more expensive than the plastic nose cone. All right, so I'm making some progress, but again, this probably is not worth watching much more of. So I'm going to work on that probably for a while, because I suspect I've not really made a whole lot of progress. That's fine. It'll get cut out eventually. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.